Hey Val Metal, welcome back to another G67 math video. Tonight we're going to be solving multiplication and division equations. So let's go ahead and start off with a great trivia question, possibly the greatest ever. What is Notre Dame's mascot? Let's put it this way, I didn't have to look that one up. All right, tonight officially we are solving multiplication and division equations with negative integers. Let's do this thing. All right, each fall our family takes a trip to South Bend, Indiana to see a Notre Dame football game. It is 520 miles from Burnsville to the Notre Dame campus. We average 65 miles per hour when traveling. Write and solve an equation to find out how long it takes us to drive to the game. All right, well, I always label everything. I'm a labeler. So I'm traveling at 65 miles per hour, and I got to go a certain number of hours. I'm not sure how many. And I'll get there. I'll have traveled 520 total miles. So it's a multiplication equation. 65 miles an hour times some hours equals 520. So to solve a multiplication equation, we use division. So here's our equation. We were trying to isolate this h to figure out how many hours there are. So we're going to divide both sides of the equation by h. When we do that, these 65s cross off, leaving us with just h on this side. And 520 divided by 65 on this side gives us 8. It will take us 8 hours to get there. You can plug that variable right back in and check it, and I always do on a calculator. 65 times 8 will equal 520 miles. All right, that's what we're going to be doing tonight, but we're going to throw in some negative stuff. So let's review some things first of all. A division equation is an equation where you have division as the operation, like this. C divided by 4 equals 8. All right, multiplication equation. That's an equation where you have multiplication as the operation, like 4 times c equals 8. You also have to know what an inverse operation means. I'll be using this word. Inverse means the opposite operation. So tonight we will solve division equations with multiplication. We'll solve multiplication with division. Those are inverse or opposite operations. A couple other things to keep in mind. And I know these things are review, but they're worth reviewing. A negative number times a negative number is a positive number. A negative times a positive is a negative. So if you have opposite signs like a -2 times a 2, that's going to give you a negative answer. The shortcut way is to remember that if you have an even number of negative integers, it's going to be a positive number that you result. An even number of negative signs will equal a positive answer. If you have an odd number of negative signs, it's going to be a negative answer. All right, let's take a look at this one. Here's a negative multiplication equation. I have a -4 times c equals 8. All right, I got to get this c. I have to isolate it, so I'm going to use the inverse operation. So I'm going to divide both sides by a -4. These -4s here will cross off, leaving me just c equaling -2. I can pop that right back in and see if it makes sense. A -4 times a -2 equals 8. Well, 4 times 2 is 8. I have an even number of negative symbols, a negative times a negative, and that's going to give me a positive answer. So yes, my work checked out. I'm correct. The answer, C, is equal to -2. All right, let's go through a few of these. We'll start off with the division equation. M divided by a -10 equals a -9. I like to think of this as something divided by a -10 equals a -9. All right, so first thing I'm going to do, I got to get rid of this -10. So this is really like a -1/10. So I'm going to multiply both sides by a -10, or if you want to think of it as a -10 over 1, you can do that. But when you do that, these -10s here cross off and you've isolated the variable. On this side, you still have to take a -9 times a -10. That's a negative times a negative. It gives you a positive answer of 90. M is equal to 90. Let's pop it in and see if it works. 90 divided by a -10 equals a -9. Sometimes I just do it this way. 90 divided by 10 is 9. I've got one negative symbol, so my answer has to be negative. That works too. All right, sometimes it's less complicated. All right, time for you to try a division equation. Go ahead. Don't forget to isolate the variable using those inverse operations. Go ahead. All right. In case you didn't Figure it out. Try it again if you didn't do this first. Okay, I'm back. I always rewrite the division equations as a fraction like this. I think it's easier to work with. I think it's easier to show that I'm going to multiply it by 12 on both sides, that these cross off because you've got a 12 in the numerator and a 12 in the denominator. On this side, you've got a negative 11 times 12. You end up with k equals a negative 132. Let's pop that in and see if that makes sense. We have a negative 132 divided by a positive 12. So let's just think about this. 132 divided by 12 is 11, and we've got a negative symbol here, so it must be a negative answer because I've got a negative divided by a positive. Let's just do a quick review here, get my calculator out. Want to make sure you know how to enter this into your calculator. Your calculator may be a little bit different, but most of them are pretty similar. So let's check my answer here. So I'm going to take a negative 132, so I put in 132, and then I'm going to hit the negative key. There's my negative 132. I'm going to divide that by 12, and there I've got my negative 11, so I'm right on. Okay? All right. Let's take a look at a multiplication equation. I think these are a little easier. Now we have 13t equals a negative 182. All right, well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to isolate that variable. I'm going to isolate that t. I'm going to get it by itself by dividing both sides by 13. If I divide both sides, I'm going to get rid of these 13s. So when I do that, these guys cross off. Oops. The 13s cross off. They cancel each other, sometimes people say. And now I've got negative 182 divided by 13. That answer is a negative 14. Okay, let's plug it in and see if it works. That means we have 13t, so we have 13. T's value is a negative 14. So 13 times a negative 14 equals a negative 182. My answer checked out, and I am good to go. All right, time for you to try a multiplication equation. Go ahead and give this a shot. Let's see how you did. Did you isolate the variable? Did you show that these 8's cross off, leaving you s equaling 12? Because now you've got a negative divided by a negative. It's two negative, an even number of negative signs. That'll give you a positive answer. Pop your answer in. You have that negative 8 initially times a positive 12. Now you've got a negative times a positive. That is going to give you a negative 96. Or do it the other way. 8 times 12 is 96. You got one negative symbol, negative answer. All right. How about this? Give these a shot. Here's a two-step equation with a negative number. I think you can do this. Give it a shot. All right. Well, in a two-step equation, you first have to get rid of this trash over here so that you can get closer to isolating that variable. So the first thing I did on this one here is I'm going to take that negative 3 and I'm going to get rid of it by adding 3 to both sides of the equation. So now these 3's now have a negative 3 and a positive 3. Those cross off, and what I'm left with is just 4t on this side, and I had a negative 15, and I'm adding 3, that gives me a negative 12. Now I can go about by dividing to get rid of that 4. I'm going to divide both sides by 4. Those cross off, leaving me just negative 12 divided by 4, which is a negative 3. Pop that in and see if it works out. So we have a negative 4 times a negative, we have 4 times a negative 3. This is a negative 12. Now I'm going to add another negative 3 to that negative 12. So it's just like adding two negatives, and I have a negative 15. Makes sense. All right. One more. How about this one? Here's a two-step division equation. That really looks scary because it has a 0 in it. All right. Let's see. Well, we know we're going to have to get rid of that 3. So that's a positive 3. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides. So now when I rewrite my equation, I've got that n divided by a negative 11 equals a negative 3. All right. What am I going to do next? You're right. I'm going to multiply both sides by negative 11. These negative 11s will cross off, but now I got a negative 3 times a negative 11 on this side. So what I'm left with is n over here. I've got a negative times a negative, so I have 33, and that's positive value. Pop it in and see if it works. 33 divided by 11, well, that's 3, but it's going to be a negative 3. So I have a negative 3 plus a positive 3. That does equal 0. Worked out. Hope you got that one right. Okay, here's your ticket to the show. 2 equations. Go ahead and solve these guys. R divided by 12 equals a negative 4. 29t equals a negative 145. Alrighty, and your ticket to the show. Oh, sorry, your just for fun question. What is the Notre Dame mascot? Greatest trivia question of all time. It's the leprechaun. This little guy right here is their symbol that they use. But then, you know, their mascots at the game will be one of their students dressed up like a leprechaun, running around, often with his hands up in that same fighting position. So therefore, the Fighting Irish, greatest football team of all time. I don't want any of you Duke fans or Longhorn fans arguing with me on that one, all right? And for sure not Alabama, even though you guys are amazing. All right, thanks a lot. Have a good evening.